In the hushed corridors and shadowed corners of every school, whispered tales of the inexplicable and the chilling abound. From eerie encounters in deserted libraries to ghostly apparitions haunting empty auditoriums, school campuses hold secrets that defy explanation. These are the school horror stories, where the ordinary intersects with the paranormal, leaving students and staff alike questioning what lurks beyond the bounds of everyday perception. Here are some of the spooky school stories for tonight. It was a Wednesday evening, and my class at the arts building always ended late. This particular day, my classmate and I had stayed behind to finish our project. By the time we were done, it was already dark outside, and the building was eerily quiet. Most students had left, leaving just the two of us on the 6th floor. As we headed towards the elevator to leave, I couldn't shake off the uneasy feeling creeping up my spine. The hallway lights flickered ominously, casting long shadows that seemed to move with us. Despite my nerves, we realized we had forgotten something back in the classroom. Reluctantly, I volunteered to go back alone while my friend waited by the elevator. The journey back to the classroom felt like an eternity. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind outside, amplified my anxiety. When I finally retrieved what we needed, I hurried back to the elevator, my heart pounding in my chest. Upon rejoining my friend, we both felt a palpable sense of relief as the elevator doors closed. But our relief was short-lived. Instead of descending smoothly, the elevator inexplicably stopped at every floor on the way down. Each time, the doors opened into darkness, revealing empty hallways bathed in the dim glow of emergency lights. Fear gripped us as we exchanged nervous glances. Why was the elevator stopping at every floor when no one was there? Was someone else with us in the building, unseen and unheard? By the time we reached the ground floor, our nerves were frayed to breaking point. Without a second thought, we bolted out of the building, our footsteps echoing loudly in the empty courtyard. Only when we were safely outside did we dare to stop, gasping for breath and trying to make sense of what had just happened. As we caught our breath, we couldn't shake the feeling that something had been watching us, lurking in the shadows of the 6th floor. The story of the heartbroken professor who had jumped haunted our thoughts, adding a chilling layer to our already terrifying experience. To this day, whenever I pass by that arts building on campus, I remember that night vividly. It serves as a reminder that sometimes, the scariest stories are the ones that happen when you least expect them, in the places you least suspect. It was my second year in college, and one particular day stands out vividly in my memory. The day we encountered the ghost in the school auditorium. It was during a play that my classmates and I decided to attend. Excited to get the best seats, we arrived early, finding ourselves among only a handful of others scattered throughout the auditorium. As we settled into our seats near the front, we chatted and giggled, eagerly awaiting the start of the play. The atmosphere was relaxed, and everything seemed perfectly ordinary until we heard the faint strains of a piano melody drifting through the air. At first, we assumed it was someone rehearsing for the upcoming performance. But when we glanced towards the stage, our hearts skipped a beat. There was no one there. Confused but still dismissing it as our imagination, we returned to our conversation. Yet, the piano music persisted, growing louder and more distinct with each passing moment. This time, all four of us froze, exchanging nervous glances. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end as a chill ran down my spine. "It must be part of the play, right?" one of my friends whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "But why can't we see anyone playing?" another replied. her eyes wide with unease. Before we could rationalize further, the piano played again, a haunting melody that seemed to echo through the empty auditorium. Fear gripped us as we realized something wasn't right. There was no logical explanation for the music we were hearing. In a sudden burst of panic, we scrambled out of our seats and bolted towards the exit, our screams echoing off the walls. Confused faces turned towards us as we burst out of the auditorium doors, gasping for breath and trying to make sense of what had just happened. Outside, we huddled together, shaken and shaken to our core. The encounter with the ghostly piano player had left an indelible mark on each of us. We later learned from campus lore that the auditorium was haunted by the ghost of a student who had tragically died in an accident on what was supposed to be his graduation day. The story went that he had been an accomplished pianist, eagerly anticipating his moment on stage to receive his diploma. Since that day, whenever I pass by the school auditorium, I can't help but remember the eerie piano music and the chilling presence we felt. It serves as a reminder that sometimes the stories we hear about ghosts and spirits might not be mere tales after all. They could be lingering echoes of lives interrupted, seeking closure in the halls where their dreams were once alive. It was my third year of college, and the excitement buzzed through our group of classmates as we prepared to watch our first opera at the school auditorium. The chilly air inside the auditorium made me realize I needed to use the restroom before the performance began. Ignoring the slight unease that crept over me as I walked down the dimly lit hallway, I chalked it up to the old building's atmosphere. Inside the restroom, I was relieved to find it empty except for a woman who was just leaving as I entered. Alone now, I quickly headed into a cubicle, eager to finish and return to the opera. But as I sat there, I heard something unexpected, a beautiful, haunting voice singing what sounded like an opera aria. At first, I assumed one of the artists had come to the restroom for a moment of solitude or practice. Yet, the more I listened, the more it became clear that the voice was coming from within the restroom itself, echoing off the tiled walls. A chill ran down my spine as I realized there was no one else in the restroom with me. Heart pounding, I pushed open the cubicle door, expecting to see someone standing there, but the restroom was empty except for myself. Fear gripped me as I hurriedly washed my hands and practically ran out of the restroom, desperate to rejoin my classmates in the safety of the auditorium. As I entered the auditorium, I scanned the stage, hoping to distract myself from the unsettling experience in the restroom. The performers were already in place, preparing for the opera to begin. I wanted to shout, to release the fear that coiled in my chest, but the auditorium was silent, filled only with the soft murmur of anticipation from the audience. Unable to keep it to myself any longer, I confided in my classmates about what had happened in the restroom. Their eyes widened with a mixture of disbelief and intrigue, and it wasn't long before a senior student overheard our conversation. She approached us cautiously, her expression serious. "I've heard stories about that restroom," she said quietly, her voice tinged with a hint of apprehension. "They say it's haunted by the ghost of an opera singer who used to perform here many years ago. She died tragically, just before her final performance." My heart skipped a beat as the pieces fell into place. The beautiful singing I had heard, was it the ghost of the opera singer, still lingering in the place where she once found solace in her music? From that day onward, whenever I passed by the school auditorium, I couldn't help but think of the ghostly voice that had filled the restroom that evening. It was a reminder that sometimes the echoes of the past can intertwine with the present in unexpected ways, leaving us with a haunting tale to ponder. It was during my 4th year of high school when my classmate and I encountered something chilling in our school's haunted building. We had stayed late on the 4th floor to complete a project due the next day. By the time we finished, it was well past 7 in the evening, and darkness had settled over the campus. As we gathered our belongings, relieved to be done, we heard unmistakable footsteps echoing down the hallway. At first, we assumed it was the security guard making his rounds, coming to remind us that it was time to leave. But when I glanced towards the doorway, expecting to see the guard's familiar silhouette, there was no one there. The footsteps continued, steady and deliberate, yet the corridor remained eerily empty. My classmate and I exchanged nervous glances, our hearts racing. "Maybe he already went downstairs," my friend suggested in a hushed voice, trying to rationalize the unnerving sound. Without wasting another moment, we hurriedly packed up our things and made our way to the staircase. As we descended, the footsteps seemed to follow us, echoing faintly from above. Each step we took felt heavier with the weight of unease settling in our chests. When we finally reached the ground floor and stepped outside, we were met with a sight that sent shivers down our spines. The security guard was stationed at the gate, his expression puzzled as he saw us approaching in such haste. "Did you just come from the building?" he asked, his voice tinged with curiosity. Breathless and shaken, I managed to reply, "We thought we heard you walking on the 4th floor. Weren't you just up there?" The guard's brow furrowed in confusion. "No, I've been here at the gate the whole time," he explained. "I can't leave my post unless someone relieves me." Cold realization washed over us. If the guard hadn't been on the 4th floor, then who, or what, had been walking down that hallway with such purposeful steps? We exchanged no more words with the guard, our minds racing with the inexplicable encounter we had just experienced. The stories of the school's haunted past suddenly seemed more than mere folklore. That night, as I lay in bed, trying to shake off the lingering sense of dread, I couldn't help but wonder about the footsteps we had heard. Was it a lingering presence from the school's history, a spirit unwilling to depart its familiar halls? Or was it simply our minds playing tricks on us in the quiet, empty building? One thing was certain. I never looked at that school building the same way again. The echoes of that night's encounter remained etched in my memory, a reminder that sometimes, even in the most ordinary places, the supernatural may lurk, waiting to be discovered in moments of unsuspecting vulnerability. It was one of those eerily quiet mornings at school, the kind that made the empty corridors seem longer and the library unusually solemn. With exams looming, I decided to seize the quietude and arrived at the library early, hoping to cram in some last-minute studying before the rush of students filled the place. As I settled into a corner with my notes spread out, the librarian, a middle-aged woman with glasses perched on her nose, acknowledged me with a brief nod before returning to her phone. The faint glow of morning light filtered through the windows, casting a soft, subdued ambience over the rows of books and study tables. I delved into my notes, my mind absorbed in equations and historical dates, when I heard it, a soft, almost imperceptible pest. Startled, I glanced around, expecting to see a mischievous student peeking out from behind a bookshelf. But the library remained empty, save for the librarian who seemed engrossed in her device. Shrugging it off as a figment of my imagination, I returned to my studies. Minutes passed in silence until I heard it again, this time louder and clearer. "Pust! Hey!" The voice seemed to be coming from right behind me. I whipped around, my heart pounding, but the space was devoid of anyone else. I could feel a chill creeping up my spine. I looked at the librarian, thinking she might be trying to get my attention, but she remained fixated on her phone, oblivious to my growing unease. An inexplicable fear began to gnaw at me, and I moved to sit closer to a window, hoping the natural light and open space would ease my nerves. As I turned my notes, I heard the voice once more, this time so close that it felt like a breath against my ear. "Help me." I froze, my pulse racing as I struggled to comprehend what was happening. The voice was desperate, tinged with fear and urgency. Without a second thought, I bolted out of my chair and dashed towards the library exit. Each step echoed loudly in the empty hallway as I fled, my mind racing with unanswered questions and a chilling sense of dread. Outside the library, I leaned against the cool wall, trying to steady my breathing. The morning sunlight felt reassuringly ordinary, contrasting sharply with the inexplicable events inside. I glanced back at the library windows, half expecting to see a face pressed against the glass, but they remained still and opaque. I never returned to that corner of the library alone again. The incident left me with a lingering sense of unease whenever I thought about it. To this day, I wonder who or what was trying to communicate with me that morning, hidden in the shadows of the silent library, and whether it was a restless spirit, a prank gone wrong, or something beyond comprehension. I couldn't shake off the feeling that I had stumbled upon a glimpse of the supernatural that chilled me to the core.